One. Hello, you're all very welcome to the first edition of ATGforGAA. On the line, we have a roundtable with four coaches, all from different parts of Ireland and one from different parts of the world. The main topic today is how ATG is all about ATG and how it is a competitive advantage for if you're an athlete, in particular a GAA player. So just going to introduce the other coaches on the round table. I'm going to start with Alton. Alton, tell us a little about yourself and how you got into ATG.
Welcome, lads. My name is Alton Breslin. I'm originally from County Donegal, Ireland. I've been living in San Diego for 19 years now. Been involved in the local club here for that whole time and played Gaelic football pretty competitively at home in Ireland. So it's a passion of mine pretty much my whole life. I am the coach here of the local team here, so I do all the trainings during the summer for our local club. How I got into ATG was I had knee surgery in 2008 on my left knee, just a meniscus, so not ACL. But I found after doing rehabilitation before the surgery, then I had to go and do all that rehabilitation after the surgery again. It was actually kind of worse than before the surgery, so it didn't really make sense to me going down that route. And I knew there was alternatives, and I'd been having knee pain probably since 2018. I wasn't sure what was causing it. I could still run and do most things, but after trainings or after a game, it would just be very, very bad. Wouldn't be able to get into stretch positions to do any mobility or flex work after or the next day after training. So I sought alternatives, and then one of my clients actually came to me and he was like, my physiotherapist is telling me you should be coaching me ATG for my knee. And so I was like, oh, that's very interesting. So I started to do some research myself about 2 years ago, and pretty much all into Ben Patrick and who he was. And I had no idea who this person was at the time. And he seemed to be fairly legit. He was working with some top coaches here in the United States, a lot of professional athletes. And his message just seemed to resonate with me. So that was like April or May of 2022. Started the program then, he and I, the client, and I would say by that September, both of us were pretty much healed. I did an Ironman that September with absolutely no pain whatsoever. So that had been the first one of those that I was able to complete without having any pain. So I knew for sure I was onto something then, and joined the coaching program a couple of months later, and that's kind of how my coaching journey through ATG started.
Savage, yeah, and yeah, I think initially it's kind of it's trying to get over an injury. Once you get the results, maybe like it's the last call with ATG for the most part. You've tried a lot of the other stuff. I think that seems to be across the board. And then ATG is kind of the last throw of the dice, and then it's like, wow, this is completely different. And yeah, brilliant. And we'll touch on not just the actual rehab side of things in this podcast, but just even as an athletic performance side of things as well. Ev, you're joining us there from Port in around the Midlands there. Tell us a little bit about your backstory.
Yeah, so I guess my backstory is similar to all of us here. I've been playing football my whole life and played a little bit of hurling as well on the way up. But as I started going through the grades and started getting into strength and conditioning training, I slowly found that I started to become stiff. I started to become sore. I was picking up small injuries all the time. Like pulled hamstrings and all these things that people are regularly facing. And then when I was in my first year in college, it was when like the first of the big injuries started happening. I dislocated my right shoulder, and then that led to a whole chain of injuries over the next 5 years. I dislocated both shoulders on multiple occasions, and then eventually led to a fractured tibia from my knee hyperextending. So I rehabbed my injury, came back, got back on the pitch, and about 8-9 months later, after getting back, the exact same thing happened. My knee hyperextended, and then this time it was the ACL. And that came at the end of a string of about 5 years of constant injuries, big and small, dealing with chronic pain and stiffness, never really feeling like I could perform to my best when I was on the pitch and in training. So I had heard of Ben Patrick and came across him before from kind of various platforms. Probably Joe Rogan was a big one, from hearing him talk about it, and then I started looking into it. But it wasn't until after my ACL surgery, when I was about 2 years down the line after it, and still didn't feel like I was fully rehabbed. I still had pain in my knee. I was dealing with patella tendonitis, with Achilles issues that were all coming as a result. And yeah, there wasn't a lot of things that were seen to be working for me and were able to kind of get me out of that hole I was in. And then yeah, I start digging into ATG, and then finally decided I was ready to go back playing football after about 3 years of after my ACL surgery. And when I got back on the pitch, my performance was, I couldn't believe the difference compared to how I finished up before I had all those injuries. And I'd never felt the freedom and range of motion, just generally been pain free, not having to deal with any chronic aches and pains and stiffness. And my biggest or the biggest thing I guess I'm proud of was coming back to my first season back after all those injuries and going the complete season completely injury free. And that really put my faith in the process and the system of ATG. And ever since then, I've been diving in and becoming certified as a coach, and now I'm helping other athletes with the exact same thing to get them through their injuries and start going through seasons injury free, because I don't think we should have to be dealing with injuries on an ongoing basis and chronic pains and stiffness. So that's what's brought me here, and that's kind of my journey to where I am now.
Savage there, like two things there. Not only recover from an ACL after a few setbacks, but feeling your performance on the pitch, and that's it. I think when you really commit to it, and you see the results on the pitch, you're like, wow. Then it does sinks in. It's just, this stuff is so effective. Now, savage stuff. Connor, you join us there. You're based in around Blanche, Dublin.
Yeah. So played GAA since as long as I can remember, really. I stopped playing probably around 2019. Got into ATG mainly because of yourself, Adam. Long story. But I was familiar with Ben Patrick probably from about 2020. I don't have as much of an injury story as some of you guys, but I loved his mobility side of things. I did overcome shin splints through a lot of his techniques. So that has helped me a lot. But yeah, I'm done my ATG level 1 and 2 as a client, and then I further progressed into the coaching side, and now I'm doing my ATG level 2 at the moment. So I'm ATG level 1 certified, and yeah, progressing from here on out.
Savage, great stuff. And yeah, look, very quickly on myself and the story. Like, I've been trying S&C. I've been doing different types of modalities at S&C for over 10 years. Absolutely piss poor athlete. And as it says, I tried everything, and it was only the ATG system that I seen the biggest improvements. I tried the traditional methods, and any sort of speed program, power program, you can be sure I tried some of it. But in the last year or two, since I tried ATG, my performance, my speed, and this is at 34, into my mid-30s when I should be slowing down, I've never felt as fast, never been as more powerful. So for me, that's why I'm obsessed. Also had it coming back from my shoulder injury as well, that, yet again, similar to yourselves, Alton and Ev, you tried different modalities for years and just weren't seeing results. So we're now going to just touch on some of the main pillars of ATG, okay, and why this is different. All right, I'm going to start with probably one of the main pillars, and it's a concept of range training. And very, very simply, you've got short range. It must go under short range and long range. Okay, so if you think of an exercise, it's where the tension is and where the tension is the greatest. So in a back extension, for instance, the most tension is in the short position. You're going at the top, at the hamstring and the glutes, and then let's say conversely that you've got an RDL. The most tension is in the long range, for the muscles, the hamstrings are fully lengthened. Now, why is this important? Okay, Alton and Ev, you've touched on your injuries there, on not being able to solve them. All right, ATG has a system of using not short range for getting blood flow, which helps heal. So that allows you to do more work to get into the longer range stuff. But it has a healing effect, especially around the connective tissue. So some people that might be watching this might have seen Ben Patrick, the backwards sled. That's a short range exercise, and you're getting a lot of blood flow around the knees. But then you have the long range exercises again, which we've touched on, and they're what's actually going to do the remodel, strengthening that connective tissue. So if you look at it, let's say an ATG split squat, it's a full range, full knee bend, and that's putting a lot of tension around the knee joint. So why this is kind of different from your standard training is that the standard, let's say you're doing a half squat or a lunge, the joint isn't going through that full range of motion. So it's not getting strong in each ranges. And that's where the real sort of magic in ATG is that in particular, that long range work. So you've got your likes of ATG split squats, you've got like a full stretch RDL, the Jefferson curl for the hamstrings. And it's really like you're strengthening in those lengthened positions. So the muscles are fully lengthened, and then there's tension going on to the joints. And that's one of the main reasons why there's such a reduction on injuries, or lads are able to come back after injuries because now, quote unquote, they're more bulletproof. So that's the short and the long range. That's one of the main reasons why ATG is different from your traditional program. It utilizes all the ranges in the strength curve. We're now going to go, Ev, going to talk about the ground up, another pillar, the ground up. Do you want to touch on that?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think, as we're going through all these pillars, they are all intertwined. And like when it comes to building from the ground up, it still uses the concepts of long and short range. So while we're going to talk about these in categories, they're not an isolated thing. So for building from the ground up, so essentially when we think about it, if, as athletes and as GA athletes, when we're constantly pounding the ground and we're doing it at high speeds and high forces, when we're jumping and twisting and turning and sprinting, it's our foot, it's our lower leg that's actually coming in contact with the ground. That's where our impact is happening. And what happens at that point where we make contact with the ground and how our body reacts, that's going to send all that force and the interaction with our body up through all our limbs. So the stronger we can become in the lower leg and the feet and work all that strength up through the chain, the more resilient we're going to be, the better we're going to be able to deal with that force, absorb the force, and then translate that back into the kinetic energy and the force to actually drive us forward and produce more power and produce more speed. So this is like a huge concept for me, like as someone dealing with like ankle injuries and achy joints, really getting in and focusing on the feet, the ankles, and building all the way up. So the easiest place to start is, okay, how do we target the front and the back of the ankle? We need to target and train our tibialis muscles along the front of our legs, which is an area that most athletes will completely neglect. We tend to focus all our time on producing force, but one key part of building from the ground up is being able to absorb force. So we need to be able to absorb it to convert it back into the force we need to be faster and be stronger and be more explosive on the pitch. So training that in balance is one of the key concepts for building from the ground up. And I think most strength and conditioning approaches nowadays and approaches that most coaches will use is all about force production, which is an important part of training, but we're missing a whole half of the equation here, where we need to be able to absorb the force. We need to be strong enough to handle the force we can produce in our bodies, because the force that we put into the ground is going to put back up into us. So we need to be able to handle that, and we need to start where that force is coming from the ground. So we need to build the strength in the feet, in the lower legs, up to the knees, up through the hips, and all the way up through the entire body. And as I say, leave no stone unturned. Again, it's like our strength through length. It just, quote unquote, will become more bulletproof, and we're better able to handle the forces that we're able to produce. So yeah, I think that's as opposed to a top-down approach where we focus on all the big muscles, it's focusing on these key parts, these key interaction points where we're actually hitting the ground. Will go a long way to resolving many people's issues and those niggly aches and pains that most GA players that in my experience tend to feel. So yeah, it's another huge key concept, and it ties very much in with the long and short range when we look at it in more detail. You're on mute there, Ed.
Yeah, just yeah, very well explained. And just to touch on, like, yeah, like you think of how high ankle injuries are within GAA players, for instance, or even knee injuries that's related to the lower limbs, because you know your tibs aren't strong enough to their tibs or your tibialis are your first line of defense, and if the tibs aren't strong enough to take that force, boom, into the knee. But also, I think a big thing, like that's the point what I'm trying to get across, is that the lower limbs, like, are so, as you says, for actually producing force as well. So you can strengthen up the hips, you can strengthen up the quads, but you'll only be able to produce as much force as your body can handle. So you can have the strongest hips and the strongest quads, strongest lower back, but if those lower limbs can't take it, the body won't produce it. And to give a very quick example, there was a 100-meter runner, the record holder for Asia. He's a sub 10 seconds, 9 something. Sue Bingham, his name is. He's the only Asian to ever break sub 10 seconds. And the big differentiator is Coach Ronnie, second name, is said was they put a big emphasis on the soleus, which is the smaller calf muscle. They realized that was very weak. And one of the big factors from him going from to a sub 10 seconds sprinter and getting onto the actual 100-meter final was getting these lower limbs, in particular the soleus, strong. So yeah, cannot be understated. Great stuff. Connor, do you want to talk about stretch strength?
Yeah, so pretty much stretch strength. People always ask, like, what is stretch strength? Stretch strength is the progressive strengthening of stretched muscles. So getting strong when the muscles are fully lengthened. Do this by loading mobility, flexibility exercises like you see Jefferson curls, ATG split squats. And I think it gives you like the freedom to move your body in like whatever way you want when you get good with this. So like an analogy I give to people is when your muscles are not strong in these stretch positions, it's almost like a piece of tissue paper. When you pull it, it's going to tear. But when you're strong in these stretch positions, it's like a resistance band. It's going to take a lot of force to tear it. So where do I see this being beneficial for GAA players? I think for GAA players, if you're able to get into positions that are going to allow you to be able to create more force, which are going to increase things like jumping, running, even things like kicking. Like you've probably seen the picture of David Clifford kicking the ball and his shin is almost touching his face, you know? So like, I think there's loads of benefits for GAA players. I think GAA players are it's known that unnecessary injuries are a big part. So like getting strong with this stretch strength stuff is going to build your connective tissue strength, which is going to directly correlate to increasing your tolerance to plyometric training. It's going to reduce your chance of muscle tear, reduce your chance of tendon rupture, going to help you recover quicker from training sessions, from pitch sessions. So like, and people always say to me, they say, like, why would you prescribe this stuff to people when they're just going to get injured? But like, I wouldn't tell someone to do a heavy back squat if they've never squatted before. So I recommend people first and foremost learn short and long range concepts like you discussed. That's going to teach people how to warm up properly. I recommend always warming up before doing any of this stuff, before doing any sort of training, full stop. And also keeping with progressions. So don't jump straight into this stuff. Progress gradually, slowly, and eventually you'll get there. Another thing I'd say, and lastly, is this stuff can be quite intense, and there tends to be a lot of muscle damage with this stretch strength stuff. So 1 to 2 times a week for beginners, for people who are new to it, and then gradually progress, and your body will adapt more and more. And I think it can be great for GAA players, just limit the chances of unnecessary niggles, unnecessary injuries, and always bring it back to the warm up, the long and short range for your warm up, and not jumping into it too quickly, progressing gradually and slowly. And yeah, I think it's very, very beneficial for GAA athletes and just people in general.
Yeah, 100%. And like that's a good kind of thing we should all, I should have said from the start, is that with these long range exercises, so you mentioned Jeff's curl, the ATG split squat, and you touched on it.
Yep.
You know, you don't jump straight into these. You know, you build up slowly. And yeah, and what to stretch strength, and another kind of way I say it is loaded mobility. And like
Yeah.
what you could like, you know, you have a guy player and they want to do yoga once or twice a week, which is fine, but that's 2 hours. With this loaded mobility or stretch strength, you only really need 5 minutes, so it's very, very time effective. And the adaptations are much more lasting because there's tension going on, similar to what I described. You described them long range exercise. There's tension going on around the connective tissue. When you have passive stretching, like nothing wrong with yoga, nothing wrong with Pilates or anything like that, but
Yeah.
it's passive, as in there's no tension. The muscles are getting lengthened. But with this long range, with this stretch strength or loaded mobility, the muscles are getting lengthened and there's strength or tension going on here. And that's where it gives these the massive adaptations. You get strong in these end positions. As you says, a lot of injuries happen in these end range positions. You know, so if you can get strong in these end range positions, you have more protection. Your tissues have more protection. And very, very quickly, I just like success these clues. And Clifford, you look how the best kicker in the ball in GAA, right? And look at the hamstring and his hip flexor flexibility is insane. So, and even from explosive side of things,
yeah.
Michael Jordan, like, or sorry, Kadura Ziani, like he's able to slap, he's one of the best dunkers in the world. And he's able to kick the ball, with kick the rim with his foot. So, success in his clue. So, yeah, very well explained. It's another kind of differentiator why the ATG system, it utilizes this sort of mobility, these sort of exercises. And again, they're very, very effective. Both, and lastly, you're going to talk now about the structural balance, and sort of how the ATG system addresses your weak links.
So I suppose just touching on what everybody else says and kind of what Evan said too, about everything is intertwined. I would say structural balance, the way I've been taught, is kind of the final piece. So normally, like the 3 or 4 of us, and most people that have come to ATG have come with some sort of a niggle or constant something going on, and they've had to fix whatever it may be. So usually you're fixing the weak link. As we get stronger and stronger with the structural balance, we're looking to create, I suppose, balance. If you're looking at the body, front to back, top to bottom, and side to side. In normal S&C training, those are called the 3 trans planes, but we'll just keep it simple for now: front, back, top to bottom, and side to side. You know, usually we see athletes that are strong in the quads, but then they have really weak hamstrings. I'm probably that way myself. It was something that I've definitely underutilized going for. Just in any of the strength training I was doing, I'd be doing lots of squats, lots of deadlifts, but I wouldn't be doing any RDLs, wasn't doing any Nordic curls, any hamstring curls, anything like that, really, to be honest with you. And probably that's where my weakest links are as a structure, looking at the front and back. At ATG, like we say, we usually build from the ground up. So for us, I would say the biggest one when you use that would be that at every gym you go to, there's a calf machine to do calf raises, like what Evan spoke about for the power thing. But then most of our tibialis anterior is weak, which you hear people talk about shin splints a lot, patella pain. That's because they're not building structurally the front side of their leg muscle to be able to take the impact of that force. And that's kind of basically, in a nutshell, where shin splints are coming from. In terms of structural balance in ATG, it's a thing that comes from Charles Poliquin. Basically, it's a formula which is called relative strength. For the lower body, we use a front squat for 3 reps on a set tempo of 4 seconds down, pause at the bottom for 1 second, and explode back up. We use those numbers, and then the relative strength for the rest of your lower body is worked off of that. So I won't go through all the numbers, but that's kind of how it. And then on the upper body, we have a 45-degree dumbbell press for 8 reps. And that's how we use the system for, again, relative strength for all the other exercises, external rotations, power raises, shoulder presses, all that kind of good stuff. So that's one way we use structural balance. if you're not hitting these numbers on one of them, you're more likely, if you continue to do your training the way you are, that at some stage you're going to get a strain. Another thing Charles used to say is that he used to notice if you're not making significant gains in the gym, they're more than likely on the antagonist part of that body. So say if you're able to bench press 200 pounds or 100 kilos, we use as an example, and you've been at that stage for, I don't know, 6, 8, 10 months, he said there's probably more than likely you have a shoulder imbalance, or the trap 3 raise and the back would be imbalanced. And that's something you would need to look at as a weak link to get that one back up to where it needs to be. And he says that he notices huge improvements when he's able to use somebody like that there. He said that also in 2 decades of coaching athletes, that people can hit these numbers relative to other lifts tended to perform better on an international stage and have the lowest incidence of injuries. So on top of being able to perform better, and he probably is one of the best coaches in the world in terms of Olympic athletes. He has more medals, I think, won than any other coach at the Olympics in the last 20 or 30 years. And that's basically all for power and technique and performing better. But he also is noticing that the reduced injury incidence, which keeps you on the field of play longer, being able to train longer. Me, myself personally, going back, looking at like my own structural balance issues over the last 10 or 15 years, there would be like maybe during the season, I'd have to play in goals for 3 or 4 weeks because I'd have some sort of a hip flexor problem, I'd have a quad problem, I'd have a calf problem. It wouldn't be ongoing, it wasn't, but I just didn't know what was happening. And you'd have to do, rehabilitation and all that kind of stuff, which wasn't really working. And I would prefer not to be playing in goals, for instance. I want to be playing outfield. So again, we probably can relate, or you have to sit on the sidelines and you're not able to train at all. So being structurally balanced, I suppose, in a way, in a nutshell, keeps you possibly from getting injured. And then on the performance end, as you get stronger and stronger, helps to improve everything else. I suppose myself, I didn't really start noticing these imbalances until I broke my ankle in 2017. Looking back now, I can see beforehand that it was there, but I think that's the first time where coming back into just even to start running 1 or 2K to get back up, I was like, oh, now my gait is not working correctly. I could notice that. And obviously my ankle mobility wasn't great, and I didn't have any ATG coaching at the time or training or any clue about any of this stuff. So there's a lot of physiotherapy and my own research online, which kind of is how I got into all of this stuff, to be honest. Then it goes into the glute, then from the right glute to the left glute, and then into the knee pain. And that's kind of, I've seen, so from the ankle to the right glute to the left glute to the left knee, has basically, the structure had basically disintegrated from that injury, and then me trying to get back to where I was, not thinking, well, proper rehab of the ankle stuff. And again, we'll go into all that stuff in a later podcast, but that's kind of in a nutshell what I see as structural balance.
Yeah, good stuff, both. And I think it does come back to, like, it really does about coming back to reducing the risk of injuries, and these are all these pillars touch on them. And, there's an absolute epidemic in all sports of injuries, in particular GAA, where the ACLs are on the rise, hamstrings are on the rise. The injuries are absolute criminal. So what we're doing, the old way is not obviously working, right? So this is why this program is getting so much acclaim, is that it's not the be all and end all. It doesn't make it magic, but the injuries are absolutely like reduced dramatically. And it's like, again, like no more than the structural balance. If you are balanced, if you have a balanced lower limbs and upper body and stuff like that, it's going to reduce your risk of injuries. So look, to conclude, right, that we're going to do more of these podcasts, and we're actually going to go into each pillar separately, and we'll do an actual deep dive in each pillar in particular, and more topics on the ATG system. Well, for now, just to close, we'll go back to Ev. Where can people find more if they want to reach out, or if you find it, if you've any what your socials or any programs, etc.?
Yeah, so the best place to reach out is on Instagram. I'm probably most active on there. So my handle there is at the.ancestral.athlete. So that's probably the best place to reach out. I've got a TikTok as well under the same handle, but Instagram's definitely the best place to reach out, and you'll find all my programs and everything I've got going on over there. And yeah, that's definitely the best place to reach out. And I'm looking forward to share more information here on these podcasts over the next few weeks and sharing everything that we know and everything from our experience with everyone.
Good stuff. Connor?
Yeah, so flexi_strength is my Instagram, and more than happy for people to send me any videos. I can do form checks, any questions about stretch strength. More than happy to help anyone out. So just feel free to reach out. And as I've said, looking forward to doing more of these in the near future.
Good stuff, Connor. And Alton?
And probably the best place to get me is also Instagram. Ageless.athlete would be my handle. I would say if anybody needs to send in any mobility or flexibility videos, that's probably something that I'm really focused on, especially on the weak links. If anybody's any questions on any of that stuff, you can reach out to me on that. Ageless.athlete.
Oh, sorry. Great stuff, Alton. And great stuff all around. Quickly on me, if you want to reach out, if anyone has any questions or they want to reach out, IG Instagram is the best place for me. It's at athletic.ability. And yeah, thanks for tuning in, and we look forward to doing more of these in the future. Thanks.